You need to watch this video before your next interview because I'm going to explain the different types of interview questions that you can expect, how long your answers need to be for each of those different questions, and how to actually answer those questions properly. And I'm going to order these from easiest to hardest. All right, so first let's start with the easiest type of interview question, which are behavioral interview questions. These are the easiest because all you have to do is tell a story about something that you have done in the past. And to answer behavioral questions, you just need to use the STAR interview method. Now, I've got a whole bunch of videos on my channel that you can watch separately because I explain exactly what it is and how to do those. So I'm not going to go into full depth here because you can just watch those videos if you like. Also, a lot of people know the STAR method or the CAR method. Either one is totally fine. And behavioral interview questions are also the easiest because you should never blank out on a behavioral question because you're just talking about something that you have done in the past, which means you just need to be able to tell a story. For behavioral questions, your answer should be somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes. When you're answering a behavioral interview question, the most important part of your answer is actually going to be the actions portion because this is where you talk about the how and the why of how you actually solved this problem and how you achieved that result. The actions are also what's going to show the interviewer or the hiring manager how good you are technically at your job. So don't be afraid to go in a little bit of depth as to how you did something. And how do you know if you're being asked a behavioral interview question? Well, it usually starts with, tell me about a time where you have, or give me an example of a time where, and I've got other common behavioral interview questions up on the screen right here that you're going to want to make sure you have answers for. And the next type of interview question you need to know how to answer are the research type questions. Now, you either need to do research on yourself, the job, or the company if you want to answer these questions well. And I've got the most common research type interview questions up on the screen right here that you need to know how to answer. And for most of these questions, your answer should be somewhere between 1.5 and 2.5 minutes long. And when you're answering these types of questions, remember, they do not care what you want or what you care about, even if the question is worded that way. They just want to know why you are the best candidate out of everyone that they're talking to that they can hire. And remember, you need to show them that you are the best candidate, not just a fit for the job. And another really important thing about these types of questions is you need to show them that you are the best, not just tell them. And the best way to show is with a very short example. Now, you don't need to go into the full STAR like you do for behavioral questions, because then your answer would be way too long. You can give them a summarized version of a high-level project that you have done and the result that you were able to achieve. Now, a really common mistake that people make when they're answering these types of questions is that they share information that is not relevant for the job, the company, or the role that they're currently interviewing for. And another common mistake people make is not being unique or standing out or showing their differentiators or what makes them different from every other single candidate who has a very similar background and does the same exact job as you. So to help put all these different tips together, I'm going to speed run some of the most common research type interview questions that you're going to get and how to properly answer them. If they ask you, tell me about yourself, or walk me through your resume, or why we should hire you, your answer should basically talk about all of the relevant skills that you have for their specific role, but only after you ask them what they care about. So you should be asking them, what are the immediate projects that you'll be working on? What are the current skill sets that they're looking for? Or what are the skill sets that are currently missing from their team? Then you're going to take that information and on the fly, if you can, give your answer that's going to be exactly tailored to what they're looking for. And you're going to want to include a very short example that shows them you have done that type of project and been successful in the past. Why do you want to work here? They do not care why you actually want to work here because they're going to be the ones that are paying you. So your answer should talk about why you think you can have the biggest impact for them on their team, which means you should also give a very short example of something that you have done that's really impactful, that's relevant for what they care about, and you're going to talk about how having a big impact is what makes you happy, and that's why you are so excited about joining this team and joining their company. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Number one, you got to talk about that you're going to still be there at their company in 5 years. Number two, do not talk about how you plan on getting promotions or getting their job. You do want to talk about how you're going to be gaining new skills and progressing in your career while you're at that company so you can get better at your job. They know that you want to get promoted in 5 years. You don't need to actually say that. So talk about all the different skills that you have currently, what you're good at, and what are some of the auxiliary skills that you're planning on building and getting while you're working there over the next 5 years, and then how you're going to use this combination of current skills and new skills to have a really big impact for them. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? For this one, you're going to want to talk about technical strengths that they care about in the job. Do not talk about soft skills. These are not going to get you hired and these are not going to help you stand out. And whenever you give a strength, make sure you give a very short example of a time that shows that you aren't lying and that you were able to actually do something with this strength. And for the weaknesses, don't share a weakness that is relevant for the job that will actually get you fired. So if you're applying for like an administrative job, don't tell them that you have bad time management skills or that you're not good at multitasking. Because if you say that you have a weakness that's really important for the job, obviously they're going to reject you. So choose a weakness that is not super important for the job, like public speaking in front of large crowds or something like that. And most importantly, whatever weakness you share, you need to have a really good example that shows them you are working to improve this weakness so they know they're not hiring someone who's still bad at this. What kind of culture are you looking for in your next company? For this one, you're going to want to do research on the company website. Look at their mission statement, their values. Some of these companies even have their own leadership principles, like Amazon. Then you're going to use those and incorporate those as part of your answer. So you should not copy exactly what it is because they'll know it's a little bit weird, but use one or two of them in your answer to describe your ideal work culture, and then give an example of a time where having this type of environment or psychological safety or this type of manager has made you really successful at your job. Why did you leave your last company? Obviously, they know that you weren't happy there or you got a better offer and you wanted to make more money or something like that, but you don't need to say that in the interview. They don't really care about any of that stuff. What they want to see is if you're going to talk badly or negatively about your previous employer and if you have an attitude problem or if you were fired. So as long as you're not covering any of these three things, your answer should be totally fine. So when you're talking about why you left your previous company, you should not talk about all the things that were bad. You should first explain why you liked working there, what are some of the amazing accomplishments that you had, what are some of the things you're most proud of doing, what you learned while you were there, and then talk about what you were able to gain by going to this current company that you're at right now in terms of a new skill set, and how this combination of old skills and new skills has now made you the perfect fit for this job and this company, and that's why you're so excited to be here. And keep in mind, I've got separate videos on how to answer all these different types of common research style questions that I've got up on the screen right here, so you can always go ahead and click some of those in my other playlist if you want a full breakdown with sample answers of how to actually answer these. And now let's talk about the hardest type of interview question, which are the hypothetical interview questions. All of the big companies and top companies in every single industry use these hypothetical questions, especially as you get to the final round interviews. These are the hardest questions because you can never predict what kind of question you're going to get. They're always typically based on the immediate problems or challenges that this company or team is facing right away, so you get a good sense of what you're going to be working on as soon as you join. And they're super difficult because there's always going to be follow-up questions based on your initial answer, and sometimes you can walk yourself into a trap if you aren't careful. Smart hiring managers and top companies love to use hypothetical interview questions because it's how they can tell if you are actually good at your job, and it will figure out if you lied on your resume and took credit for something that you don't know how to do. Your answer to hypothetical interview questions should be 4 to 5 minutes if you want it to be fully comprehensive. Now, you can tell if you're being asked a hypothetical interview question if they ask you how you would do something for them in the future, or how you would solve a hypothetical problem for them. They are not going to be asking you for an example of a time where you have done something. Those would be behavioral questions. Typical hypothetical questions would sound something like, imagine you were working here and we asked you to do, okay, so hypothetically, how would you solve, okay, let's just say this was happening here. How would you fix this? Okay, so in your story, you mentioned you solved it one way, but is there another way to potentially solve the same problem? Now, I know it can be a little confusing because it does seem like a behavioral interview question, and it does seem like it would make sense for you to share an example of something you've done that's very similar in the past, using the STAR method. But don't be fooled here. If you answer a hypothetical interview question by using something you have done in the past for one of your previous companies, they are not going to like it and you're going to get rejected. The reason why they're even using a hypothetical interview question instead of a behavioral interview question is because they want to know how you would solve this problem or do this thing for them and their company, which means they're going to have different products, they're going to have different competitors, maybe even your current company is one of their competitors. They're going to have different tools and processes and technologies and systems, and so they're going to want to know how you can solve these problems for them specifically. So how do you answer hypothetical interview questions? You're going to want to follow these steps. First, you're going to want to ask some clarifying questions because a lot of the hypothetical interview questions they give you are vague and broad on purpose. So you're going to want to ask some questions up front to get more information to make sure you are arriving at the right solution that they care about. For example, if they ask you a question like, if we hired you here at this company and we asked you to build a new product for us to make more money, how would you go about doing it? Now, this is a very broad question and there's many different ways you can answer this, and there's many different types of products that you may want to suggest. request that this company go ahead and build. So you're going to want to ask questions to help you clarify, number one, what kind of product you should be talking about, and number two, what are your constraints? Like, do you have any resource or timing constraints? Now, after you've asked one or two clarifying questions to get more information, the second step is to give an overview or an outline of your answer without going into too many details quite yet. If you want to be really good, you want to break down your answer and show them the outline in terms of key steps or key themes or ideas in which you would go ahead and answer this question. You want to give a broad overview or an outline first because it's going to show them your thought process and it's going to give them a sense of how you approach problems. So how do you tell if you should use steps or key themes or ideas as a way to answer the question? Well, if they ask you how you would do something, then you're going to want to use steps. Any other type of interview question, you're going to want to use key themes or ideas to build your answer around. So after you've asked your clarifying questions and then you've given an outline or an overview of what you're going to talk about and how you're going to answer the question, now you can actually go back and go from top to bottom in order of the things that you outlined and go into actual detail as to how and why you would do certain things. Pro tip, as you're walking them through your solution, your ideas, or your steps, if there are different scenarios that may come up, walk them through each of those different scenarios and one or two different ways to solve those problems. This is going to show them that you not only can anticipate certain problems, but it also shows them that you're resourceful and that you're the right person to hire because you know how to handle multiple different problems and solve them different ways depending on the situation. All right, so this is probably sounding a little confusing right now, so I'm going to walk you through an example hypothetical interview question and how to answer it properly to give you a good sense of how to apply these three steps in practice. So let's imagine they ask you an interview question like, imagine we hired you here in a sales position and you were talking to a customer on the phone and it kind of seems like they're not interested in buying anything from us. How would you go ahead and actually make this sale? Okay, well, should I assume this is a cold call and this is our very first time interacting with this customer, or could I assume that this is an existing customer where we already have some data on them?
It's a new customer.
Okay, well, in my experience over the last 8 years in sales, I would say that there's three main reasons why a customer is hesitant on buying. The first is due to price. The second is perceived value of the product or service. And the third is because the product itself is missing a key feature. And so let's go back and start with the first one. If we're talking about price and the customer is concerned because we are maybe too expensive for them and outside of their budget, this is how I would handle these type of objections. And let's just say in this case, maybe the customer thinks that we're too cheap and we have to fight the bias of it seems too good to be true. Like, how could we be providing such good value at such a low price? Well, I like to handle that objection by doing X, Y, and Z. Okay, so next let's talk about number two, which was the value perception. Now, if they don't have a good perceived value, there's probably two main reasons as to why this could be occurring, and this is how I would handle those. So those are the three most common types of interview questions that you can expect: the behavioral, the research, and the hypothetical interview questions. And if you have other types of interview questions that you got stuck on or didn't know how to answer in an interview, put those down in the comments and I'll reply back with the best way to try to answer those. Thank you all for watching, and don't be afraid to shake things up now that you know how to ace all the different types of interview questions.